good people of the world, galaxies, known and unknown, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, as I clear my throat one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, folks around the world, welcome back to another installment of Brews and Baseball. It is the show, folks, that brings you brews and baseball together as one, provided by two friends who we just love ball and beers, and we do both at the same time. Sometimes we do a talk show, sometimes we play games. Tonight is that episode, that talk show edition, episode 12 of the podcast. Good to have you along with us as we dive into tonight's big stories. Reese, we got a lot to break down for the people at home. Pretty condensed episode for this week. That said, we've got another beer. Folks, I'm just going to jump right into it. From Noble Ale Works in Anaheim, California, we present to you Naughty Sauce. Very, very naughty. It is a golden milk stout with coffee. And folks, if you forgot to join us yesterday, number one, I feel for you because last night's episode was absolutely banging, but because Reese came up with one of the most top tier, out of left field, but also right on the money ad reads, and by that I mean completely fake ad reads, hashtag no free ads, that I've ever heard. And I have the luxury of not having to come up with one because there's one on the side of the can today, and I'll be sharing that with you all momentarily. Any
God bless.
Any thoughts on yesterday?
You don't have to do as much work.
Yeah, just worrying about the whole setup of the entire stream and the presentation and the quality and the levels. But other than that, I'm not doing a whole lot. No, but your ad read was exceptional, and it's better for the people at home for me to not have to come up with one because it just wouldn't be as good. It doesn't hit quite like you would expect.
It is my day and night job, so that is fair. I will give you that.
He is a man of the day and the night, an all hours man, 24-hour Energizer Bunny, always going. So, Naughty Sauce from Noble Ale Works in Anaheim, California. We've got a golden milk stout with coffee. What is that, you might ask? Well, Naughty Sauce is a traditional golden milk stout beer style where the stout-like characteristics primarily come from a specialty roasted South American coffee that gives more complexity than you would ever expect. The malt character meshes with the coffee to lend notes of fresh chocolate chip cookie dough, to milk chocolate, to luscious cacao, to notes of dark espresso. It's a hearty stout ride that is full of body, yet finishes surprisingly clean, begging for another sip.
Well done, young man. I will have to say, the one thing that took me out of it completely was it's like the taste of cookie dough in it, and I was like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, that I was not.
I'm not poo-pooing it right away, but look, we've had stouts before. We've had coffee stouts. We'd have stouts with chocolate. And all that kind of stuff. Then you throw cookie dough in there, and I'm kind of just like, yeah,
it's a curveball for sure. It's not what you'd expect. And I full disclaimer, I did not read the blurb before. Like, I didn't read it before the show. I just kind of picked up the can and saw the blurb on the side, and I was like, I want to read that on the show for the first time. And we can all agree that I nailed it. But no, this is an interesting little beer. It's every time you have stout in the name, you're gonna expect something dark. This also has golden in the name, so I am expecting a very strange thing to occur. I've seen this before once. I can't remember the brewery's name, but it was a basically lager looking stout, and it was very disorienting to drink that. So I'm curious to see how Naughty Sauce compares. Let's dive into this Naughty Sauce, if you will.
The naughtiest sauce. Do we need ASMRs, or do you just want to do first and pouring?
I think we should just dive. Well, actually, let's get one ASMR each, and then we'll go forth and pour and all that stuff.
Well, lead us off, Big Cat. This is your time.
Here we go.
This is what we've all been waiting for.
This is what you came for. Quiet on set. Naughty sauce.
I wonder how it is on the stream, because always in Discord a little bit is chopped off at the end. But anyway.
Yeah, the audio is not as clean. I think it's the second bit that's really satisfying. It's not the first pop, the second little peel back of the actual lid.
Oh, yeah.
And here we go, pouring it first. And I think, yep, it is. It's exactly what you thought it was going to be, folks. We've got ourselves.
This is golden.
Yep. They were not kidding. Golden milk stout with coffee.
All right. As Monsieur Condé once said in a racist South, gentlemen, you had my curiosity. Now you have my attention.
Yeah, this is
I am smelling this right now, and the smell of it alone is like, what is about to happen right now?
I'm not quite sure what we're about to jump into, but what I can promise you folks is this. We are going to take you on this ride, whether you like it or not. And you're going to like it, because I know this is going to give us some kind of strange sensation, the strange feeling that this kind of beer, only this kind of beer can give you, where it looks like one thing, tastes like another, and I'm excited for the head to go down so we can actually jump into it without there being too much head. Again, folks, if you forget, if you're new here, number one, welcome. But we pour our beers with maximum head from the beginning because this reaction, this bubbling, this head is going to happen in one of two places. It's going to happen either in this glass or it's going to happen in your stomach. And you have all that extra air, those extra bubbles. It's just taking up space in the stomach. You feel more full, not able to drink as much. But now, pour it this way. You wait for the head to go down, then you drink it. And then you realize I can keep drinking. And so that's exactly why we do what we do here at Brews and Baseball.
You bet. And, I mean, my head's gone down pretty significantly. I just got to say, like, I'm intrigued, but also terrified by the smell. It almost smells like if somebody made a cookie candle. And... so there was that thought, but the main question I wanted to talk was, what's your rating, son?
Oh, yeah, the rating. So we've got 5.4% ABV, again, on the lower side, but I think pretty much in line with what you'd expect from a stout. 5.4... You know, I'm going to say out of 5.4... I don't... Actually, you know, you gave me a good one. Because it is a milk stout and the smell gives off a certain sort of something. We're going to call it 5.4 cookie candles. So cookie scented candles is our rating. 5.4 of them.
Perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. Because I was thinking like, well... I saw this Twitter clip of Wander Franco doing something which is just absolutely absurd. It was a routine grounder hit to him, and instead of, you know, taking it out of his glove and just throwing it to first, he took it out of his glove, spun it up in the air, grabbed it, and then one pumped his glove and then threw it and still got the runner out. And I was like, you know, there's a bit of me that's like, dude, you probably shouldn't do that. But then there's the other bit of me that's like, dude, that was, yes, I want more of that. Yes. Pop off queen. Yas queen.
Well, he was just taking notes from MLB The Show, and especially Derek Jeter out in the hole. You could see him. He was going to do his jump throw, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to do those pumps a couple of times and not even come close to throwing out Acuna at first.
No, not even close. But then Francisco Lindor, of course, is going to hit the Jeter, because why?
Defensive wizard Francisco Lindor.
of the New York
Defensive
Metropolitans.
Wizard, Francisco Lindor.
Oh.
But I'm good
Anyways.
with that. Do you want to do first and sipping
Yep.
and launch into baseball?
It's time. Let's talk baseball. But first, the first in sipping. I think I might have to drink this blindfolded, because it is.
I don't know what my mouth's doing right now.
There's a lot going on right now. I don't know what's happening. And I think this is the first time I can comfortably say that I don't know what's happening with this beer.
I definitely taste the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
It's very light
Mm-hmm.
in the stout flavor. I think mostly in the past we have had stouts where the stout flavor is pretty prominent, like it's pretty bitter or dark and all that kind of stuff. Very light on this. I don't know if this is the healthy combination of wheat to stout sort of taste that I'm looking for necessarily.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's a bad beer. We've got two. We're drinking them.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how life is. But will I say that this is my favorite? No.
No. It's the first thing that comes to mind for me is it tastes like if you were to make a chocolate chip cookie dough flavored coffee and then pour it over ice and then add a little bit of extra sweetener to it, because it's definitely sweet. You can kind of get it's more like a hint of coffee rather than a coffee taste, which I appreciate because I am a big coffee guy, but it just is lacking that little bit of extra oomph in the stout category, which I don't know exactly what the reason is for brewing a golden milk stout. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with, I guess maybe just
doing something different, probably.
Yeah, just trying to stand out. I mean, maybe it is called naughty sauce for a reason, because the brewers just wanted to get naughty with it, and they've produced. Yeah, and they've produced this here golden stout, which again, I've had one of these before or something very similar at the beer fest, and it was something about, I think, the visuals that was more not off-putting but surprising to me than the actual taste itself. I mean, we'll see how specifically it goes, but you know, over the next little while we talk shop, but I don't know about this one. I have a lot of questions, and we'll have to circle back on the rating, unless you have one right off the top, because I'd have to think about mine for a second.
I think mine is gonna be 3 out of 5.4. It's just not for me. Not for me. And that's not to say, I think some people out there will look at this and they'll either get with the smoothness of it, I suppose, rather than the harsh bitterness that a stout can offer. But for me, it's almost like the combination that they made of the cookie flavors with the wheat almost cancels each other out. So it's like, if anything, it almost reminds me, and like almost, of the jasmine rice, just because it was such a different, smooth, light, with weedy flavor like this. And that's the first thing I think of when I'm having this beer over and over again. It's like, oh, you sure this isn't a rice pilsner or whatever that was?
Yeah. So it's that same thing, but just for coffee / stouts. It's like, you sure that's where you're going with this? I was actually going to go a little lower than that. I was going to go 2.7 out of 54. Right at the
harsh boy this season.
Yeah, right.
Being the harsh boy.
Right at the halfway mark, 50%, which in the IB program, which is what I did in high school, that would give you a B-. So that is a passing grade in the IB, but on most other scales, it's probably going to be a less than stellar score, if you will. But
oh yeah,
I mean, I don't know. It could change, but I think there's something about the visual impact of looking at a beer that looks like a golden ale, and then you drink it and you're thinking this should be very dark. It's also really sweet on top of that, which, it is what it is. We haven't shied away from drinking sweet beers on the show before. We've had a peanut butter and jelly tasting beer that tasted like a smoothie almost. We've had smoothie flavored beers. We've had a lot of different types of beers that have transcended the barrier between what you would expect and, of course, the totally unexpected. And I think this falls into the latter of the two categories. So 2.7 and 3 out of 5.4.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. And now we could talk about baseball.
Baseball time. So jumping over to our national pastime, a roundup of what is going on around the major leagues in the last week. We've had a lot of headlines in the last week or so, but I think the best place to start would be, because they're here in LA, to talk about Bryce Harper coming back from Tommy John surgery. 160 days after having Tommy John, he was in the lineup batting third for the Phillies in their series against Dodger Stadium. He went 0 for 4 with a couple of punchies on, was it last night? Got a couple hits tonight, or I guess earlier today. Let me double check on his actual scoreline. Dodgers won both of those games. Actually swept the Phillies out of here in that series. So not a great look for the Phillies, but they're getting Bryce Harper back. So it's, is he that spark they really need? Maybe. I don't know for sure, but it's definitely a tough time for Philadelphia. And I don't know, having Harper back is good, but in an ideal world, you would want him to be fully healthy before he comes back. But at the end of the day, no one at this point in the season is really going to be at quote unquote full strength anymore. So you might as well just kind of accept that it's going to happen. Someone is going to be hurt at some point. He's going to get banged up. 3 for 3 today with 2 singles and a double. A couple of walks as well. So that's good for the OBP, good for the average. But it's one of those things. It's like, would you rather have? What's that?
Any ribbies with that?
No ribbies. Just a couple of runs. Yeah.
We might have an appearance of a special guest again as we talk about baseball.
The other bit of it. There she is.
Hello. We're talking about baseball.
Let me ask you a question. Sports ball.
So we're gonna bring Bella in on this. Bella, do you think that Bryce Harper should come back so early, 160 days after Tommy John surgery, which is basically repairing the tendons here in your elbow to throw a baseball? What do you think, hon?
How many days?
160.
That's fine.
You heard it here, folks. She thinks it's fine. I think there are really two schools of thought on this one, and both of them have their arguments. And I think you touched on one, if not both of them. Bringing Bryce Harper back, whether he requested it or not, say he requested it, shows that he's a gamer and that he wants to still contribute to his team. However, high risk for, I don't think that high of a reward, because like you said, I don't think he's that piece to really kind of turn around the Phillies so far this season and how they've performed. Not to say that they're, sweeping out the Sellers, even though Dodgers swept them when they came to LA. But sorry, I didn't mean to hit you. But I really think it's just kind of a waiting game at this point as to whether it's truly worth it that he's coming back this early. Because my other school of thought with this is, you're right, who is ever 100% anymore after something like that? Pitchers get this surgery and their mechanics will have to change. Sometimes people need 2 or 3 Tommy Johns to repair them and in order to repair them correctly. But think about that compared to Trout. You know what I mean? They're both kind of similar in age. They have now kind of a prominent issue with their body. Mike Trout with the back, Bryce Harper with the Tommy John. So really, I mean, sure, he can come back. I don't think he's the thing that's going to turn things around, and we'll have to see how his career numbers stack up after this. Because
Yeah.
I think especially in this day and age too, people are getting hurt more often, harder, just because in this day and age, the baseball players are more athletic specimens than they probably were back in the 1950s. But even in 1980s, like Bob Stanley, it's 1986 World Series. You see the closer for the Boston Red Sox, who's basically a beanbag with arms and legs. You know what I mean? No, not a physical specimen that we're used to today. Maybe the closest would be CC Sabathia or Bartolo or something like that, but not even them look like they are in shape as opposed to Bob Stanley in that 86 World Series. I was surprised that like one of his legs didn't collapse and he just kind of rolls, but that's how it is. And I probably shouldn't pick on Bob Stanley because he lost that series for him, but
Well, here's the thing.
You get what I'm saying with it. It's just
Right.
Is it worth it? I would say probably not.
Well, but
because
so here's the argument. Well, the argument for obviously is, they need.
Do you have any more thoughts, Bella, before you get out of here?
I no thoughts. Only know how to be small and nap.
That's true. Doesn't even know her ABCs. Just is small and knows how to nap. Tiny, tiny, tiny boy. Do you have a favorite baseball player? Do you know any baseball players?
When they sing "I Don't Dance" in High School Musical 2, those are my favorite baseball players.
Chad from High School Musical 2. Yeah. Okay.
Chad and Ryan.
That makes sense. This is a person that lives in Anaheim, folks, and has 2 generational talents. Literally, like I could throw a baseball to the stadium. That's how close she is.
I don't live in Anaheim anymore.
Yeah, she just moved out, so that's fair. I'll give you that. I'm sorry to pick on you. All right. Okay, I'll see you later.
So no, I was just yeah. So I was gonna say the big point with the Harper injury is, I guess, the question of whether or not it's worth it is less about, is Bryce Harper the second coming? Is he the savior that the Phillies need? And the answer is probably not. But
no.
What that kind of gives you as a team is a bit of perhaps motivation that if this guy is willing to potentially risk further injuring his UCL, his elbow, or whatever else Tommy John fixes, if he's willing to do that for his team to win a World Series, then where is the motivation for the rest of the guys who came up short last year and had a great run to the World Series, but ultimately came up short? Their motivation is going to be, you would think, through the roof. Now, there's guys on the Phillies who've already won championships before. Trey Turner's won a championship with the Nats. Harper left right before the Nats won a championship, so he actually doesn't have one himself. I think there's a couple others who've been. Kimbrel's won a World Series as well. So there's a lot of kind of external motivation that you could draw from this if you are a Philly. The only question is, does potentially risking that outweigh the potential gain? So what's the classic cost benefit analysis? And I would say it's like I'm looking at Bryce Harper's career per Fangraphs, right? And I'm just looking at one of the most basic stats you have in baseball, just games played. Bryce Harper has played more than 145 games 3 times in his career, in his big league career. So 2012, I would call that an exception because he came up in 2012, and that was after a couple months of the year. Played 139 games, so that's fine. 2013, 118. 2014, 100 games. 2017, 111. 2021, 141. 2022, 99 games. Missed a ton of time last year with this same injury, and of course, so far, only appearing in 2 games. So to me, what that's saying is that he, as a player, has a track record of not being injury prone, but of missing pretty significant time, but still producing at a very, very high level. His lowest WRC plus in a single season is 111, which is still 11% better than major league average. That is his worst season, and that was a 2.7 wins above replacement season, right? So there's a lot of value in a player who does miss a significant amount, or I guess more time than you would think. And you can probably throw this argument out there for Mike Trout as well. But the best ability in any sport is availability. So for him to be out there and healthy is one thing. But for him to be out there and healthy to the point where he can contribute at a high level is a completely different thing entirely. And like, look, these are world-class athletes who have world-class medical professionals supervising them. He would not have done this had he not had the blessing of the medical staff. I don't think there's any world in which the Phillies front office, Rob Thompson, the manager, and Bryce himself are going to come to the conclusion that coming back early is worth the risk of potentially potentially further.
This is another one. Masters of the English language.
Furthermore, further injuring his elbow. So
right.
You have to think he's clear, he's good. This is just Bryce Harper being a physical specimen. And that's kind of the only explanation for why he is playing now 160 days after Tommy John. I mean, that is a ridiculous gap to have a major operation that affects the game of baseball and to be able to swing a bat again. Now, he's not going to play in the field. He's going to DH basically all year or play first when he's good to throw. But, I mean, it's just wild to me that it's that short of a time frame. I think July was the earliest estimate they were thinking he was going to come back, but nope. May of 2023. May of 2023, not May of 2020.
What year are you in, buddy? What's going on with you?
2023.
How old is Harper? 33?
Harper is in his age 30 season.
Age 30?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, because other parts of it too is that, say he does miss significant time and he takes all the time that he needs to heal up. Maybe he comes back fully healthy and is the answer that Philly needs. One thing, though, I'm thinking, too, is that, because the Phillies are kind of going all in right now. They've made a big old contract in picking up Trey Turner. They've got Bohm. They've got Schwarber. They've restacked starter. It's like this might be it. And that could be another thing that Bryce Harper and the Phillies organization had to take into account. Baseball Jimmy is here tonight.
Welcome, Jimmy.
So we'll kind of just have to see, because if Bryce Harper comes back for this little push and then his career, if his elbow pops out and it's over, you lose a pretty big piece, if not the face of your franchise.
I mean, when they signed him to that deal, they signed him not just to be a player to contribute to the Phillies' quest to win a World Series. They signed him to be the face of the franchise, one of the faces of baseball as a whole. And since he's been in Philadelphia, he's been the face of the franchise. He's been their most consistent performer. He's been one of their best players. But he's also had his fair share of injury problems. And granted, he's, for the most part, been pretty healthy in Philadelphia. 2019, his first year, played in 157 games. His second year, 2020, obviously COVID-shortened pandemic season. He played in 58 of the 60 games. 2021, 141 games. And then last year was the first time really since 2017 that he's missed extended periods of time. So at the end of the day, what he means to this team is probably worth, in their estimation, worth any sort of slim risk. I mean, the risk, you would have to think, given the inputs from medical professionals and front office execs and management, etc., you have to think it's pretty small for him to be cleared to play baseball at the highest level. So
Let's go ahead. Sorry, finish it up.
no, so that was my thought. It's just there has to be a complete and total understanding across the board for everyone to say like, yeah, this is worth it. Let's get him out in the field.
Yeah, and at least in terms of not only is he a face of the franchise, but he's also a veteran presence in the locker room. You've seen the shots of him during the World Series last year, and people are tipping pitch or not, maybe not the World Series, the playoff series. Pitchers are tipping pitches, and he says, "Hey, look for this." And they got 2 homers out of it. I think it was one by Bohm, one by Schwarber or somebody else.
No, that wasn't the World Series, actually. That was off McCullers. McCullers was tipping a slider, and Harper just went over and he told Bohm what he saw. Alec Bohm went yard. I think your name, the guy who's named after you, Reese Hoskins, he went yard.
Hoskins. Not yeah.
I think they hit like 5 or 6 homers in that game. It was crazy. A lot of fun to watch people hit homers off of the Astros. But no, you're right. There's a certain added presence to having Bryce Harper in your lineup, just around the team in any capacity. So they're banking on that being
all good baseball, Jimmy. We're just glad that you showed up tonight. Sorry, I didn't mean to railroad that one.
No, you're totally fine. I was looking for a gap in the commentary to acknowledge our good friend Baseball Jimmy, who showed up here on the stream. Dude, you showing up at all is we really appreciate the support for these streams. We do these because it's something we like to do. It's a true hobby and or passion, and we wouldn't do it if we didn't like it. And so we figured, why not make it the best possible product we can? And so that's what we do. And it is our hope that you enjoy it and you're able to find some sort of value in it. So how much you show up is not, it's up to you how much you show up. We're creating it for you and for everyone out there who has supported Brews and Baseball up to this point.
Baseball Jimmy's a boy who's had some long days because he's on the baseball team now, and that takes a lot out of people. I mean, Bella's going to be in Utah in a Shakespeare show, and she's going to be rehearsing and dancing the whole time and all that. So I get it. Long days. Just want to, we beat our rival today. You bet your bottom dollar, gosh darn patootie you did. Welcome to the greatest children's show on YouTube, by the way. But that's good stuff, buddy. What positions you playing? I was going to ask how you've been doing in the Bays and Ballin' out in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing I wanted to say about Bryce Harper, I mean, he has that veteranosity, obviously. But I think what also could go against him, too, in terms of the injury is that I think from his past, you can see that he's kind of a gamer. He has an edge of Pete Rose in him in terms of Charlie Hustle. He loves to play the game, and he likes to play the game hard. The antithesis of Luis Robert today.
Yep.
Was that today? Did you see that?
No, that was a few days ago. But yeah, that was Luis Robert basically jogging to first base on a routine ground ball that he would have been safe.
Hey, he's pitched an inning, a walk and 3 Ks through 1 inning. He struck out the side, dog.
That's truly what you love to see. You love to see it. Yeah. No, you and Reese just dotting them up left, right, and center. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for coming out. That's really all there is to it. But no, you're right. Harper has had that reputation since he's been in the big leagues of being a true gamer, of basically running through a wall for his team. And that kind of thing can be infectious, but it can also hurt you, because if you're the only one who's playing with that sort of intensity and no one else is sort of picking up on that, and then you go down and then you're gone, it can kind of go the other way, where the team loses that competitive edge, where it's like, okay, I need that little bit of a little something to get me from here to here and really put it over the top. I mean, and some guys draw that edge from different places. Some guys draw it just from being able to play the game. Other guys have to be a little angry, a little frustrated, if you will. And some guys just have to be in a good place mentally. They have to be happy with their life off the field, on the field. They're playing every day, getting work in, they're healthy, etc. So it comes in all shapes and sizes, and that's what's, I think, one of the many, many, many things. that makes this whole baseball thing, because it is a weird sport and you got to have a certain personality for it. It's one of the things that makes baseball what it is.
Oh, you bet. Baseball Jimmy with some news, kind of giving up YouTube and MLB The Show for a while. You just watch the Yankees and go to bed. Well, man, it's baseball season. You know, it's usually when I go to like YouTube and I know you as well, especially when we're working, if we're working from home, usually the baseball podcasts are on during the day. All the games that we can are on during the day while we're working and stuff like that. If you're in school, you can't really do that, you know?
Yeah, right.
You have baseball and then you exert yourself about 5 days of the week, if not 7. It's been a while since high school baseball. I don't know how it works in New York. It's like, oh, we only play on Sundays, you know? We play on Sabbath.
Certain days of the week. But no, I gotta echo what Reese is saying. It's just, you never quite know what you're gonna get. You're gonna have something on. You're gonna have something to occupy you if you can. But at the end of the day, life just, it throws curveballs at you. You're not able to do everything you want to do. We only have 24 hours in a day. Everyone has 24 hours, and sometimes you just make the most of it. I know that was a weird tangent. I don't know where I was going with that, but I digress.
Baseball Jimmy, I mean, he practices or he plays every day. And so, you know, when you did that in school on the top of it, all you want to do is just watch the Yankees continue to sweep in the cellar with the Red Sox and then just go to bed.
Yikes.
That's right. Shots fired. Mariners aren't doing that much better. In fact, I think we're doing worse. Like, we are doing much worse. So,
oh no, you want actually that
I
is
still watch them.
Yeah,
I still watch them. I watched the Dodgers and I was just like, yeah, they're gonna do fine. God, the Mariners with the
I think this is actually a perfect segue into our section that I've earmarked. Every week, I'll kind of think about what we're going to talk about on the podcast, just because there's less of a set structure. It's more so, okay, what's going on? Is there any big news? Is there, something else we want to do? We're not one of those like 3 episode a week podcasts, unfortunately, but it's one of those things where if there's something that happens in the week from our last episode up until now, we're going to talk about it. But every single time, there are going to be subjects that just kind of come out of the blue like that, and it's based on either one of our fandoms, fanships, etc., or it's going to be something news related, right? This is one of those ones that's completely fanship oriented, fandom oriented, if you will, and that is, of course, talking about Reese's Mariners, the Seattle Mariners. America's
Los
team.
Marineros, if you will.
Los Marineros, if I absolutely will.
Speaking of which, sorry, I forgot to mute this. Everything's fine. Everything is fine.
Everything is fine.
Finally, the Mariners are out of a rain delay in Oakland. But Mariners,
yes, Mariners, take it away.
And of course, they on the broadcast for the game, they cut to the shot of outside the Oakland Stadium, rooted in Oakland since '68. Until 27.
Rooted in Oakland.
27 or less. They did DFA La Stella. Look, if it brought up Bryce Miller to have his performance that he did, given it is the Oakland A's, it was a 2-1 victory, and that is alarming to me. That is alarming that we can't get the offense going here.
Well,
I'm not nervous yet. But I would be remiss, or I'd be lying to you if I said I've gotten a good night's sleep this season.
Well, what I will say is that in an ordinary scenario with a team like Oakland, yes, I will agree that there's a little bit of concern with not having your offense score against, quite frankly, a team that just doesn't care about the product they're putting on the field. However, the opposition yesterday was none other than Mason Miller in his second major league start. And that dude is absolutely nasty. The stuff he is throwing from the right side, filthy. It's gas, triple digits, easy, hard breaking stuff. He's got good command from what I've seen. They have a really, really exciting young player in their hands. And he absolutely dealt for 7 innings yesterday. So it's not like this is just a random guy they called up from the minors to fill a gap in the rotation. This was a guy brought up specifically to get that good major league experience and be a piece of this organization for the next few years at least. Now, obviously, there's a lot going on with the Oakland ball club, with the A's off the field, but what they have on the field, on the mound, and what they had yesterday was a great prospect who pitched very close to his potential. That said, I do get your concern with the Mariners offense, and I'll turn it back over to you without hijacking that whole bit.
Well, and it's totally fine, because you have to understand from my perspective, you have only one Mariner batting above 300. That is not at the face of your franchise either. That is Jared Kelenic at this point, and he is having his hot season. The other boys need to back him up a little bit, because everybody else on that ball club, except for Kelenic and maybe 3 other guys that are batting sub 200, 230 is the average. And look, unless if we start hitting ding-dongs a lot more, that gonna be problem. That gonna be big problem. And LaStella went to his high school. Oh, that's kind of cool. It's LaStella. I always know LaStella is an Angel guy, so when he came to the Mariners, I was like, yeah, okay, we'll see what he can do. And it wasn't enough, and so they DFA'd him. He'll be picked up someplace else. I think he's too good of a utility piece to just be collecting dust wherever he's at.
Yeah,
but say Julio, batting 239 right now. And look, I know it's the beginning of the season, new rules. Hitters have a little bit more pressure on them because there's a time element involved in each pitch in the at-bat, all that kind of stuff. But seems to me that a lot of the other players are adjusting on their other ball clubs. So I'm kind of like, hey guys, do you mind we stop playing a little bit of baseball? Yeah,
and
because this is the first time we've been acquiring people. And it just hasn't translated in terms of expectations. And my expectations are always just artificially low. But I think most other people thought that they would be performing a lot higher, and most people expect them to perform a lot higher. For over 25 years, they say that we're the team of the future. 25 years. And no. I'm sorry, but no. With that being said, it is early in the season, not yet 40 games, or it might be approaching 40 now that I think about it. But I'm really hoping that they kind of have a similar big stretch in the later part of the season. I think that's kind of the Mariners as a franchise. You look at 95, they were awful through the first part of the year. And as Utri once said, they pulled a Nosferatu and came back from the dead. Seemingly, it was by divine intervention. Angels in the outfield sort of a situation. LaStella, Angels in the outfield sort of a situation where they finally figured it out. Ken Griffey Jr. came back and he was able to perform as well as he could before his injury in May. And they made the playoffs. So I'm kind of like, can we make it happen again? Can lightning strike twice like it did for us last year? I think it can. But with the players that we have now, the averages that are on the stock, you need a little bit more to be contentious, I think.
Yeah. And we did talk about this last week. We did talk about the Mariners among
the IL as well. Not great. So yes, go. Now you can go. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I brought up a lot of these numbers from last week, just looking at some of the advanced metrics and some of the underlying stats. And there was a promising picture for Teoscar Hernandez specifically, among other players, but there was a promising picture there. And I just looked at it again. A lot of those numbers, excuse me, a lot of those numbers have kind of held where they are, if not regressed a little bit. But at the same time, I mean, it's like so I'll pretend I excuse me. I'll pretend I understand what being a Mariners fan is truly like, but I acknowledge that I really don't. What I will say is that
Pretty close to being a Falcons fan.
well, that is not a great experience really for anyone. So just being adjacent to that, not fun. But what I will say,
think about it though. In our franchise, the Falcons have obviously been around for a little bit longer than the Mariners have. But just think about it. You had your early dark ages with Norm Van Brocklin as the coach, and then Leighton Bennett, was that his name? The guy that was after him? Either way.
you probably know more Falcons history than I do.
So they had their dark ages. The Mariners had their dark ages literally until 92, I think, when they had their first winning season. I don't think the Falcons really did anything up until Bartkowski, if I remember right. They might have won a couple of playoff games, but didn't make it much past then. I think it was only when they had Bartkowski, Dirty Bird, and all that kind of stuff where they started to turn it around. So I think Mariners, Falcons, Jared Kelenic with another hit, by the way. That man is super hot fire right now, and I am praising the heavens. No more Kyle Lewis. No disrespect to Kyle Lewis. I know that he's kind of my scapegoat on this show. I hope that Jared Kelenic keeps it up because I think he's performing at the level that I know Julio can and I know Ty France can. It's just a matter of it all coming together. And I think later in the season is going to be the go time for us. But we got to stay in contention at least, because if we open up a 20-game deficit to Houston or to the Rangers or whoever, we ain't going to make it. So.
Yeah. So there's a lot of reason to be a little on the pessimistic side for the Mariners. And I think I kind of outlined. Well, no, I mean,
Braves have won some World Series, and the Mariners are just sitting in their couches at home watching it happen.
No, I know, but what I'm saying legitimately is there's reason for optimism, but there's also reason for pessimism. Like I get it from that perspective of seeing the repeated cycles of, you know, it's like if you were to draw it out in a circular diagram, it's like have one good season, make a couple big signings, we're going to be good, have a bad season, and then end up at this point in the diagram. Like we're somewhere in this part of it. If you want to look at it, think about it in a circular way of just repeating the same thing over and over. So I get it. It has that same sort of effect. And, you know, I don't know what being a Mariners fan is like. I'm taking your word for it, of course. I know you to be just a pessimistic person just generally. Although you try to keep it positive most of the time. I will throw this in.
Sports and entertainment is that's where my pessimism goes.
Yeah,
because if I kept it to myself, it would not be a great time. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But yes. No. I'm a pessimistic person, but I think for me, I enjoy the pessimism of it because it gives those people the opportunity. You know, if they watch this, you know, and I don't care. But if they were to watch this or something, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong then.
Yeah.
Go to work. Figure it out. And look, I know we kind of are on our high horses here because we're basically talking about, hey, why can't you perform up to our standards? And we can never hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, let alone an 80-mile-an-hour fastball and have a good average. So as far as I'm concerned, maybe next time I'll just have, you know, one of those masks that's two butt cheeks on my face and have my mouth right here and just blow wind the entire time. Oh, yeah, Dave Roberts, he should be fired. He should be castrated. Might be a much more interesting show. Much more interesting show.
Man, that just went from
I'm going to Amazon right now. I'm gonna see what they got.
We went from a 3 to a 10 instantly with that bit.
This is who I am. So look, the Mariners, it's still too early to tell. I'm not excited about where it's going, and you know Richard, he the old man has given up, and that's fair. He's been in it since '77, and
Right.
uh, so you kind of have to go. And even before that with the pilots, but I don't think back then you couldn't watch the games. All you had was radio, and then they were gone after a year. But he was just like every time I try to say no, but this year he's just like Reese. No.
Well, yeah. So again, I was very high on the Mariners to start the year, and I still am. Like there's a little bit of me, probably the better part of me, the part that more often is the one that I mention is being positive about the Mariners and having an opportunity to see this club move in the right direction. I still think that's the case, but some clubs just have a tendency of slow starts, and this might be just a case of the Mariners starting really slowly but kind of picking up coincidentally when the weather warms up. And you have you look like you're burning to say something. You have burning desire.
Yeah, look, I am. And also just because we talk about the Mariners all the time, but like I'm sending you something, and I will be giving you full disclosure to all of the people at home. I went to Amazon and I typed in ass mask. Don't ask me why. But I just want you to see the first cursed image that has come up. Like there are 2 or 3 masks that have pretty similar designs on it, but it's nightmare inducing. And why won't it let me click the thing? There we go. And then I'll paste it, and hopefully you can show the people some way in higher def better than I can, holding my phone to the camera. But if that's what it has to be, that's what it has to be. But look me in the eye and tell me this person wasn't at the Star Wars cantina. Look me directly in the face and tell me this guy wasn't in the background of the Star Wars cantina. Had to have been there somewhere. And
no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I just showed the people at home, and if you're listening to this in podcast form, then you're gonna have to check out the VOD when we release it tomorrow morning. But my lord, that was I enjoyed that bit. That was good. Cursed images. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And
but I'm committed to this bit that and also my Amazon search history is just going to be weird.
You're going to get all sorts of recommendations.
I am very much committed to this bit. I really want to have something to make my face look like an ass. And this might be it. So we'll see. I'm very excited. And I say for the Mariners, too early to tell, but we get it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, there's reason for pessimism, and there's reason for optimism. I think, again, it's too early to really definitively say like this season's a failure, but I haven't experienced that multi-season experience, the multi-season roller coaster that is being a Mariners fan. I mean, they won 89 games in 2021, one more than the World Series champion Atlanta Braves, and they missed the playoffs. And then they end up last year making the playoffs, winning a playoff series, and causing you to cry actual legitimate tears, which I had never seen before, at least in that circumstance. Tears, literally tears of joy. Literal tears of joy. And then to see how things have kind of transpired between the offseason and now. And I'm not saying, again, it's very early, but there's a lot of like, oh my God, here we go again. That's the sense that I'm getting from you. Is there's a lot of, oh boy, here we go again.
Yeah, and look, we'll have to see.
Yeah,
we'll have to see.
I would argue, as someone who has been to the Northwest, after not having grown up there, the weather makes a difference. There is a tangible, legitimate impact the weather of the Northwest can have on you as a person, just mentally, and I think that does have something to do with it. But again, I'm not from the Northwest. I'm not going to say unequivocally that everyone from the Northwest is unhappy, because it's just not true. but it has an impact. It has an impact on your mental health, and I'm not gonna sit here and deny that I've had that same thing happen, where it's like I go up there to visit my parents from sunny Southern California, and the minute you see the cold and the feel the cold and see the rain and gray, you're just like, oh, cool, more of this for the unforeseeable future. That said, I am very excited to go up in the summer this year because it is gorgeous in the summer in the Northwest. Like, absolutely picture perfect, mid 70s, sunny basically the whole time. You truly love to see it. So I'm excited for that. But again, I think the weather has an impact on it. And I think as the weather warms up, I think some of the new guys especially will get used to it. They'll get used to the climate and the region and just being in a new place. But it's May 3rd as we're sitting here and doing this show. So really, who knows?
Yeah, just started the month of May. So yeah, it's
yeah.
You never know.
Speaking of the month of May, over the weekend, right before May 1st, last weekend in April,
it's May.
It was going to be May, and now it is May. It's May.
It currently is.
It's May. Hi, I'm the problem. It's May.
May.
I'm surprised I haven't seen that yet, but it's kind of a stretch. Anyways, Mexico series. That series, I just want to highlight that little bit because I think it's a component of Major League Baseball that I think gets overlooked every now and again. Obviously, with the pandemic, we haven't had as many of these as I think the league would have wanted. But the series in London in 2019 and the series in Mexico over the weekend are two examples of what I would call Major League Baseball presenting itself as this product, this exciting, fun thing, but really at the end of the day, it's a facade. It's just a front for something else. And that's not to say that, oh, this was, a completely inflated exhibition of baseball. But there was definitely some tinkering with the baseballs and playing at a really high altitude that kind of altered the general perception of what the sport is, particularly to people who aren't fans like we are.
Yeah. I'm curious because I think the thing that'll be interesting about this Mexico series is that it depends on where you play in Mexico. I've been looking briefly to see the history of Mexico series have been like. It's obviously not been a regular thing. The Padres, if anybody, are the ones that are more familiar with this, obviously closest to Mexico on the West Coast, at least. Maybe if you drew a line to Arizona and we'll see where that is. But what I'm trying to say is that the Padres have done this before. And definitely a few times. MLB has had 5 regular season series in Mexico. Padres were in it 96, 99, and 2018. All of them were in Monterrey. Now, I'm kind of looking online to see the difference between the altitudes of Mexico City and Monterrey, because part of me wants to think that Monterrey might be higher, with more mountains and stuff, higher above sea level than Mexico City. No?
Monterrey is about 1765 in feet. Mexico City, at least the stadium they played at, was north of 7,000.
Okay, so I flipped them. them.
So
I was always thinking because Mexico City, when the Spanish came and they kicked out the indigenous peoples there, it was like a Venice sort of a place. You know what I mean? Or at least Tenochtitlan or whatever the name was that Mexico City was before that whole thing.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that, could be the second Coors Field in a way. And it is a more intense Coors Field in a way.
Yep.
It's Monterrey, second largest city, and I don't know what the comparison is between Monterrey and Mexico City. Mexico City, obviously the biggest one. I think it's one of the most tightly populated, meaning that the population per square mile or something like that is probably higher than a lot of other cities, and certainly where Major League Baseball players play. So we would have to see. I think that this series is pretty not important, but it's definitely a great opportunity for the league because Latin American leagues have always had a deep, rich history with baseball to the United States. You always have stories of not only white players, but Negro League players going to the Latin American leagues and playing. I think my favorite story is when Satchel Paige and a bunch of All-Stars were flown to who? It was a Latin American country, and I'll look it up quickly. Uh, but essentially, the dictator of the country just like put them on a flight, got them here so they could win the championship for their team. Like that's one of those things. Great stories of baseball that involves Latin America, and with this series, maybe could introduce the Mexican leagues or the Latin American leagues, maybe somewhat creating a more partnership with MLB rather than just kind of being a retirement destination or a workout destination for certain players. It'll be very interesting. Dominican, who I'm thinking of is Rafael Trujillo.
Mm.
And he put these guys on a flight to the Dominican Republic to win the game for the general because cult of personality, the dictator can't lose, all of that kind of stuff. Except he did lose because he got assassinated. But my point, I think, is present.
Yeah.
I think it'll be very interesting, not only because of the different dynamics of where they're playing, higher altitude, but also a great opportunity like the World Baseball Classic, what it did to globalize the game, maybe bolster the leagues in those particular regions themselves if they don't want to merge with MLB.
Right. And
this could be a thing too. I'm sorry.
No, keep going.
The thing too that can adjust the old unwritten rule rigmarole attitude of baseball could be changed with the Latin leagues. And I'm not saying that the Latin leagues, those players don't have egos and all that kind of stuff. Who have you seen some matches? You know what I mean?
Right.
But they carry more of a swagger, more of a love for the game, and not more of a love for the game, but a more. It looks like they're having more fun. It's not as rigid as if you plunk somebody, you got to hit them, or you can't steal if you have a 9-run lead and all that kind of stuff. They don't care.
Yeah.
If they hit a big old ding dong, they will rub it in your face, and the pitcher will fight back, and then we have more entertainment.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It
exactly.
reminds me of the Ty Cobb scene that I showed you. It's kind of more of, this is not disparaging in any way, but it's more of a circus approach to the game, more of an entertainment approach to the game, more of a fun approach to the game rather than I've got to perform or I'm gone. You know what I mean? And I think that attitude is more prevalent in Major League Baseball than in the Latin leagues.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see the dichotomy, to see if they merge, to see if they have some sort of partnership to play series in the future. I think the World Series name has got to go at this point.
Yeah. If it's not,
I think we have shown that there are players in different leagues, in different countries that could smack our behinds just as well as any American could. So this is just a big opportunity for baseball. I hope they don't screw it up. That is the thesis of my statement right now.
Yeah.
And I doubt that they will, but it's, big business, and especially in sports, they always find a way to do something. So.
Right. And I think the big takeaway from this whole series is effectively the underlying message is to grow the game. And what specifically that means is kind of up to Major League Baseball to decide what that means. Because obviously with the series in Mexico and the series in London a few years ago, the idea was to expose baseball, Major League Baseball specifically, to an audience that hasn't necessarily seen it in that capacity. So how are they going to do that? What are they going to do? They're going to amp up the exciting parts of the game. What's more exciting than a home run? I mean, I don't think there's anything in sports that kind of compares to, from a player's perspective and from a fan's perspective, the joy of hitting a home run, regardless of what level you're at. Hitting it over a fence, a ball that's coming at you with movement, with velocity, hitting it over a fence. There is a certain entertainment value in that. There is a certain satisfaction you get from that you can't really quantify. And so Major League Baseball is going to do what they can to maximize that bit of it to grow the game. Now, is that a true representation of what the game really is now? I don't know for sure. I know offense is up this year. I know runs per game are up this year. Games are a lot more crisp this year with the new rules, and it's great. But that's not necessarily a representation, the Mexico series, of what baseball is and what Major League Baseball is. And what you're saying is, I'm on board with it. There is a potential for expanding beyond the United States and Toronto, right? So that there is, and the World Baseball Classic showed us, there's an appetite for baseball played at a bigger level, at a broader level. That's not just restricted to clubs playing at the city level. So the idea is grow the game first and foremost, and then deciding what form that comes in is kind of up to the commissioner. It's up to Major League Baseball, and there's an appetite for it, I would argue, for sure.
Well, and I think baseball too, especially with the pickup and the speed a little bit, I think that they found the happy medium. And this is just me talking out of my butt. This is why I'm getting the ass face mask. But oh, now it's gone. Come back. There was one thought that I was going to bring up, and then hopefully I remember it by sharing this too. Another cool idea, yeah, obviously the World Baseball Classic and the national teams, it's kind of like the Olympics of baseball. Would be very interesting to see kind of a Champions League, to have the club teams of Japan, the club teams of the Latin American leagues get in a tournament and play.
Yeah.
And it could be like spring training. You don't need to have your big old stars out there. I don't agree that you shouldn't let them sit out, but that could be something interesting that they may have considered, and I would love to see. And it's more baseball content to help grow your game. And I remembered what it was I was saying before. Now, this is a hot take, and it probably, it's not hot. It's probably lukewarm, and it's mainly just a tertiary perspective. But a personal opinion, not a tertiary perspective. That's pretty much the exact opposite. I think that the rules with this game has made a perfect medium of quick, fast pace like basketball with the sort of what I call the background sports like soccer and stuff like that. That's a slower game, a lot more strategy. You're not going to be scoring goals all the time, and you essentially put it on in the background. You're at the bar. Sure, you're watching the game, but you're there talking with your friends, asking how their day was. The professor's over there drunk in the bar because their students just didn't do well on the last test, even though he basically handed it to them. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I think that they're at a very perfect medium with that. And they're going to open it up to the Mexico series. There's going to be a London series. Cards and Cubbies are going to go over there.
There's
long story short, I just think it's such a great opportunity to grow the game. And with that being said, I would almost, if you were to grow the game in this way, think about the baseball stadium experience and try to make that less for everyone and more for the baseball fan. I'm not saying alienate all the families and stuff that want to explore, what have you. But, sushi at a ballpark. You know what I mean? Or, fancy concourses and all that kind of stuff. It's just, it takes away from the game part of it. And I think that also needs to be maintained if they were to go expand in the London series, Mexico series, and what have you.
Yeah. No, I agree. They're just introducing that aspect of the game. It's not just the on-field product, but the off-field experience, exposing that part as well, bringing that part. And knowing that you have ballparks, historically and to this current day, that are less about the amenities and the glitz and glam and all of the fancy this, that, and the other. And you just have a ball game. You take baseball.
I think you take any baseball fan and even the most mundane of baseball fans, and I think all of them would prefer the baseball experience without all the bells and whistles. I understand that the owners have to do whatever they can to get people in the park. except for Oakland. They don't have to try anymore, or Colorado. But I keep going back to this interview. I think it was with Roger Plimpton, who is a journalist, and he does sports sometimes. A big baseball fan. And he talks about how even people who don't like baseball, and they go to baseball fans and they see how much fun they're having, it's almost like that they're not in on something. They don't know what it is. That element that us baseball fans, it's how we appreciate the game. And I think that's always going to be there. That's like the eternal flame at JFK's grave. It ain't going to go away. And all you got to do is foster that in your expansion. You don't need all of the boat races in the jumbotrons. You don't need the fireworks and home runs. Sure, I don't care. That's kind of been created into a tradition. Whatever. But stuff like that, the bells and whistles in between. You know what I mean? Or the bells and whistles on top. I think if you were to have bells and whistles on the top, you would focus on your community. Say in Oakland, you want to have a bells and whistles for a new park? Have low-income housing. And have those low-income housing, maybe those people are working at your ballpark, so they don't have to go far. And it creates a community kind of like back in the old days when the baseball players would live by the ballpark. And I'm not saying we have to change everything to make this happen, but that's the kind of expansion that I think MLB needs to focus on more than what I'd say, like calling it the TikTok popularity. They're doing it just because this particular thing is trending. We got to do these particular jerseys. We got to have this particular ad break and all that kind of stuff because it's what the kids are talking about. You know, it's like, no, present the baseball and the kids will come to you.
Yeah, showcase the things about it that make it great. Showcase the fun in the game of baseball. Emphasis on the game part of it, because that's the part that's going to attract. That's the part that entertains. Players having fun, players playing with emotion, displaying that emotion, not being afraid to display that emotion, and playing at the highest level. Again, playing a game. I mean, I can't emphasize those words enough, and how that should and always should be the focal point of this discussion is how do we make this the fun game that it is.
And like and here's another thing in terms of, let's say if we were to bridge the gap between let's be honest with ourselves, inclusivity and of all of the different communities is a very on-brand thing to support right now. It's like, obviously, we both support full inclusion with everything, but I think we can also say that that's sort of a trend as well. So if people who aren't as genuine as we are to include everybody in the game, they could use that as an opportunity. Major League Baseball, say for instance, they would like to expand their market a little bit more to women. Let's talk about the history about women in freaking baseball. Let's talk about the female owners of baseball. Not Marge Schott, but Effa. I can't remember her last name. Effa Bailey, I think. She ran a Negro League team back in the day. Her husband owned the team, but she was the top dog as far as they were concerned. And talk about stories like that. Talk about the whole fact that there was a baseball league of just women for over 10 years that was profitable. And I think if we coalesce those stories, I just read a story about a girl who played for the guys' team at Brown. Yeah, sure, it's Brown. They're not a baseball powerhouse. But what a fantastic story. It's about the love of the game for baseball. And you expand it to the different communities. So people are like, oh, wow, if this particular girl is playing well at baseball with the guys, I want to go see it. Me as a guy, I want to go see it. This is something I've never seen before. And if she's good or if she's not, we'll have to see. I'm not going to certainly shove her out the door because she's a woman.
And you
that's
right,
ridiculous.
And you want to see it because it's something that hasn't been done at that scale, at that level, and that is in and of itself an achievement because
it's genuine excitement. It's not put on. It's not to go for the trend. It is genuine excitement.
It's excitement
And-
for the sake of excitement, not excitement for the sake of being able to say, oh, look at this thing that we're doing.
It's like, look at how woke we are. No.
It's
You
that
know?
it's that authenticity. I think that is what we're after as far as growing it. There's a level of authenticity that needs to go hand in hand with it. Frank's joining us. Frank, what up? Thanks for popping by. Dollar Glizzy days at the ballpark is a fun day. That is true. Having good ballpark food, good cheap ballpark food is part of the experience. And as
You ain't gonna find that in stadiums no more.
of course, as is the beer, which I am out of. I need to pour my second one. But that is a great way, I think, to segue into something that I think not we're taking for granted, but is definitely
Good, Frank. Don't worry, buddy.
it's something that we have talked about for the last 2 years, almost excessively, but I don't think there's ever a way to do it excessively, and that's talking about the unicorn of baseball in Shohei Ohtani. And in 2023, Shohei Ohtani continues to be Shohei Ohtani. Let me just throw out some stats for you.
Before you throw out the stats,
Yeah.
I also want to put something on record right now.
Yep, go for it.
I am very stringent on Shohei Ohtani being called the unit GOAT, and unanimous. That's what I meant to say. The unanimous GOAT. He's proven me wrong. I literally said when we were first talking about it, I still favor Babe Ruth because of how fundamentally he changed the game. You look at stats, you look at how the way strategically the game was played, completely different. And that's pretty much the edge for me as far as a two-way player compared to everything else. I knew you were coming back. I could hear you. But and literally I said, it's like, I'm not saying that he doesn't have that opportunity. I'm just saying, prove me wrong. Become that GOAT. And he is doing exactly that. And I just hate that he's doing it for the Los Angeles Anaheim Angels of California, Angels Anaheim of Los Angeles Anaheim. I mean, for
What?
God's sakes, it's
Sponsored by
the
Disney.
name. Yeah, I spilled a little bit. I got too animated and I slammed the table.
As one does.
Is it the podcast episode?
Mhm.
But look, I just needed to say that before you rattle off the stats. So you tell the people how well he's doing this year.
As I
For
time
me.
this beer open perfectly, let's dive in. I hope my mic picked that up. I didn't do it right in front of the mic, but I hope it picked it up. So
ASMR?
it wasn't supposed to be ASMR. It was just kind of generally trying to open that. Shohei Ohtani in 2023 as a hitter is hitting 306 with a 916 OPS. For the non-baseball folks out there who aren't as in tune with the stats as I am, that's basically, he is toward the top of the league in the ability to get on base and hit the ball hard and hit the ball for extra bases. He's very, very good at that. He is in the top 1% of the league in hardest hit balls this year with 116.7 miles an hour off the bat. That is very, very hard. An expected slugging percentage, so slugging trying to take out all of the kind of external factors, of 583. So if your slugging percentage is 583, that means you're averaging a little more than a double every plate appearance, which is a lot.
Oh, and I'll tell you about slugging after the fact because I told you about a specific stat. So, but finish and then I'll get you on them on that.
Yeah. And then just some percentile rankings outside of the actual stats. Average exit velocity as a hitter, 88th percentile. Hard hit percentage, 95th percentile. Expected batting average, 89th percentile. Expected slug, 94th percentile.
Yep.
With what I would call... I don't know how they calculate this. This is all StatCast, but only 66th percentile in sprint speed, which I feel like is off because he's very fast. Like, very fast.
Might not need to go fast. He doesn't need to go fast if he hits at 484 feet. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not upset about that, and also they don't need Ohtani to steal bases. They need him to get big old knocks,
Yeah.
doubles, homers, triples if he got him. He could like out a triple in Anaheim, no problem, if he hits into that right field corner.
Yeah.
No problem.
No, he's got it.
And the stat, I don't know if you remember this, but when we were talking about Babe Ruth before, there was one stat that was so absurd. I mean, besides the fact that Babe Ruth broke his own record 560 something times in terms of home runs, but his slugging percentage, I think in 1920, was 847. Now, given slugging, if it isn't slugging plus, it's not that great of a statistic because it doesn't take into account the era, the league average, what have you. That's usually what the plus means in the statistical world of baseball. But the only person that passed him is Barry Bonds. Nobody's come close. Nobody's come close to that. That was the stat that I was telling you about. And of course, Barry Bonds got there because he was Barry Bonds. And we let him do that. Sure, he might have had a complete balanced breakfast that didn't include Honey Nut Cheerios. But like, you have to understand how crazy that statistic is. And also the people watching this show have to understand how crazy Shohei Ohtani's performances are because he's doing it in the current age with all of the advantages presented to us. Baseball is now more of a big business machine. It's not kind of a ragtag game like it was in the 20s. It wasn't a game that completely alienated an entire group of people that could have been better than the players in the major leagues, in the Negro League players. So, as far as I'm concerned, Shohei's at least on my Mount Rushmore of GOATs. At least. And I think if anybody says otherwise at this point, they're just kidding themselves. They're just kidding themselves. No one has done this since Babe Ruth. No one. And he has done it in this day and age. He has come from a different country to do it. And he started in Japan first. It wasn't like he showed up a spring chicken like Babe Ruth did. He was 19 years old when the Red Sox picked him up. He had some years on him. Years he could have used to bolster his stats even more. And so, yeah, if anybody like Stephen A. or whoever says he's a quiet guy like Trout. He might not be the face of baseball in terms of Babe Ruth, how he was with his gregarious personality and all that. But as far as I'm concerned, he's the game of baseball.
Yeah.
He is the high pitch of excellence in pitching and in batting. And sorry, Stephen A., but you're wrong. Sorry, Mad Dog. You're wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah, I do want to throw this out there. I know Stephen A. did apologize for his horrible take, borderline and actually past borderline racist take about Ohtani not being able to be the face of baseball because he doesn't speak English, doesn't speak great English. And I do want to throw out there this stat that you mentioned Babe Ruth today. Ohtani became today the second player after Babe Ruth to have 500 strikeouts as a pitcher and 100 home runs as a hitter. Two players in the history of Major League Baseball have done that. Babe Ruth, Shohei Ohtani. That's it. That's the entire list. And to think that he's doing it in an era where guys are throwing harder, more breaking stuff than ever before, harder pitches to hit than ever before, and he's doing it at the highest level while still every fifth day going out and getting the ball. And when he's not getting the ball, he's hitting. I mean, to have that rhythm as both a hitter and a pitcher is astounding, because it'd be one thing if he was a closer, right? If he took that role from the World Baseball Classic and turned that into his everyday role, if he was a closer full time, right? Because if you're a closer, you don't necessarily have you're going to pitch every single day. You're going to pitch in certain scenarios when your number's called and whatever.
Depends on how good your team is, because also like having a closer like Ohtani on the Angels is just like having a Ferrari in a Arkansas garage. You know what I mean? No disparaging against Arkansas, but keeping a thoroughbred in the stable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Let's ignore the first one.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, how do you do that?
Exactly. And so
taking out Blake Snell after 84 pitches. How could you do that?
Yeah, that's still wild.
How did you do that?
We'll never not be confusing.
The goated sports commentating. I mean, he's technically an analyst, so he doesn't commentate, but he has had some interesting takes. I will say, though, he does interview people like Pete Rose, somebody that's not allowed to get some airtime. And I'm not saying I am the biggest fan of Pete Rose, but Pete Rose, very good hitter, very good baseball player.
Yeah, still the hit king.
Like his approach to hitting was the same that I grew up with. Always sit fastball until it turns into something else. Because you can always adjust with an off speed, and you'll see by the seams where it's going to go. Is it a slider across the plate? Is it a split finger where it'll absolutely die? And you can see the ball in between the pitcher. My hands are small, so this looks really weak. But and here's another thing about Babe Ruth and Shohei Ohtani as well. We briefly touched about it, definitely on the last stream while we were playing the game. I am thoroughly convinced that if we wrote down every single pro and con of their particular generation or the time that they played at, I'm sure that the pros and cons would outweigh each other equally. Because let's put it this way. You have all of the medical, physical advantages at your disposal in the current day and age. And people can throw harder. The balls are pristine, and they exchange them. They exchange them if even a slightest bit of dirt gets on it. And they're so stringent about having people not cut up the ball or add substance to it in order to help them pitch better. Think about when Babe Ruth was pitching. Back then, the baseball wasn't made very well. If you were pitching through the innings, people would spike it, scuff it, sandpaper it, cut it, spit on it. That thing was a black ball that was also misshapen by the later innings of the ball game. Can you imagine trying to throw a misshapen hacky sack for location and doing it well?
No chance.
Sure, they might not have thrown it as hard, but that is equally hard, I think, as a pitcher, because if that ball is moving like a jumping bean, you know what I mean? You're not going to be able to control it as well. And that's just one example out of all of them. So the last thing I'll say is that Shohei Ohtani, as far as I'm concerned, he's on that Mount Rushmore with Babe Ruth. Trying to compare the GOAT is just a meaningless conversation. But if he's not at least on your Mount Rushmore, I think you need to go to some sort of counseling.
Yeah.
I think professional help is required.
Yeah. And just to round out this point about Ohtani being on that list, we shared some percentile stats, and we shared percentile rankings and some stats on him as a hitter. Most of those top tier as a hitter. All right. Here's the pitching side of it. He is 4-0 with a 2.04 ERA in 7 starts with
ERA of
2.04. It was 0 something up until a couple starts ago. His last 2 starts have not been great. Gave up 4 runs in 5 innings today to St. Louis. Didn't get a loss though, so he's still undefeated on the year. Didn't factor in a decision in that game, but 35.1 innings pitched, 50 strikeouts. Some percentile rankings for you. Average exit velocity, 96th percentile. Hard hit percentage, 90th percentile. Expected batting average, 97th percentile. K rate, 93rd percentile. Whiff rate, 93rd percentile. You get the idea. Not only is he...
Ohtani card? Where is my 99 Ohtani card?
He is top tier in hitting, top tier in pitching at this level in today's day and age. I mean, what more do you... And this is not the first season he's done this. This is the 3rd year now that he's done this, both of these things, and run the bases really well, of course, being really, really fast at the highest level. This is the 3rd year now. 2021 is his unanimous MVP season. 22, his runner-up MVP season. 23, what I think, should it continue on this pace? Should he stay healthy? All those things considered, he's the heavy favorite to win MVP for sure. I don't know if he's heavy favorite to win Cy Young at this point, but he's going to be in that conversation as well. I still think he's going to be a very, very heavily discussed name in that conversation. So just the fact that we get to watch him, I mean, not watch him, but we pay attention to him, not us literally because we're in Southern California and don't have cable, but we get to follow his season in this day and age. We exist at the same time as Shohei Ohtani. If that's not something to get you out of bed every morning as a baseball fan, I don't know what does. Like,
he's Japanese Babe Ruth, Babu Rusu, baby.
Or is Babe Ruth American Shohei Ohtani?
Well, I mean, I just say.
I mean, that was
Babe Ruth came like 100 years before.
Yeah, I mean, that was for the bit, but you get the idea.
He carved the path, and now Shohei is starting to lay down concrete, maybe building a nice old freeway on it.
Mm-hmm. He's doing the thing all over that path. He's doing the Lord's work, truly. A couple of the notes I want to hit on before we wrap it up tonight. These kind of few things, I don't know if they throw a wrench into our predictions, but they definitely have a little bit of a, let's keep an eye on these. Jacob deGrom. I know this was in this was in all of the discourse surrounding his contract with the Texas Rangers, 5 years, $185 million. He has hit the injured list with right forearm tightness.
Forearm tightness.
Which is not necessarily the kiss of death, but it is not a good sign. And from his body language, him leaving that start, it did not look good. And I don't want to say, like, I personally am a big fan of Jacob deGrom. I'm happy he's no longer with the Mets, so I can be a bigger fan of his now. But I really hope he stays healthy for a full season. Obviously, he's already missed. He's going to miss some time. How much time, we'll see. But we, as baseball fans, deserve to see truly, fully healthy Jacob deGrom. He's too good to not see that.
I agree. Unfortunately, it's kind of one of those Bo Jackson situations. It's some guys, or Derrick Rose, for instance. I think Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose, yeah.
There's some people that are absolutely generational talents, but they're made of glass. And that's not disparaging against them. Holy crap, you're doing a job that requires you to physically exert yourself beyond what is considered normal for human capabilities.
Yep.
And that there's never any serious judgment from us as far as the players are concerned and their performance. And sure, we talk out of our behinds, making sure, hey, why aren't you doing what we want you to do, dingus? That kind of stuff. But deGrom, legendary pitcher, and it's really too bad. Texas leads the AL West right now, and that's definitely thrown some things into our predictions, definitely. I just hope he gets better, and I hope the Mariners decide to not let the Rangers win the division. I just appreciate that.
Seconded by this guy over here. Aaron Judge. Also hitting the injured list with a hip injury. I know he was supposed to take batting practice on Monday of this week. I don't know what the latest on that is, but he's the captain. He's the highest paid player on the team. He's the face of your franchise. For him to miss any significant time while the Yankees are also dealing with a ton of other injuries. I looked at a list of injuries for New York, and it's crazy. It's like Rodon, obviously. Tommy Kahnle's missing a lot of time. Lou Trevino, Frankie Montas, the list goes on, and then you add Aaron Judge to that. Obviously, I think Harrison Bader just came off the IL, and I know he's been a very solid addition to the Yankees. He grew up a Yankees fan too, so that's got to be a good feeling for him and for New Yorkers. But there is a level of concern with the Yankees, who were not great last year without Aaron Judge in the lineup. I think the splits with and without him, it's a small sample size. He played a lot of games last year, but he is the reason they made it to the ALCS last year. And he like as kind of unfortunate as it is for a team like the Yankees, they kind of go as he goes. So if he misses any extended period of time, it's going to be a struggle for them to really recreate his offensive production, because you just don't know what you're going to get from any other player in the lineup except for Judge.
I'm glad you touched on that, because my question to you, if you didn't bring it up beforehand, I was going to say, yeah, Aaron Judge is injured. Now here's the question. Who leads the Yankees now? Who is that presence that's going to hold everything together? Who's the one that's going to hold everybody accountable for their performances? Who's the one that's going to support them if, say, there's a slump? There's a big story about Aaron Judge paying for, was it Trevino? No. Volpe. Going into town, get some suits. He goes to pay at the end of the day, and the guy who works there at the suit shop says, "Oh no, Judge already took care of your bill."
I mean, he's
who else is going to do that
right
on the Yankees?
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned, who's going to do that? Stanton?
I mean, the only other two options from both the ability to do that and the leadership perspective, Giancarlo Stanton, Garrett Cole. But I am willing to bet a lot of money.
But you have to understand the disparity between Judge and those other two guys. Now, given they're probably not used to that role, and if they had to step up to the plate, I'd say maybe Stanton could do it. Not sure about Cole, because Stanton has been with the Yankees a little bit longer than Cole has. And also, I think Stanton kind of fits the New York vibe more than Garrett Cole does. Because I knew as soon as the Yankees picked him up from Miami, it was just like, oh, he's just going to be a tank machine all day, just whipping balls out of that little league ballpark all day long. Hasn't really done that.
Not really. And
done that. Garrett Cole, hot and cold. There are times when he will absolutely go to work. But that man has been on the Pirates. Man's been on Houston. Man's bounced around until he came to New York. When Stanton, it was just like, okay, Miami, and then they had to sell him because Miami's Miami.
Yeah.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Derek Jeter, for that connection. But
I mean, Garrett Cole's numbers this year his numbers are really good. 5-0 with a 1.35 ERA and 7 starts, 52 strikeouts and 46.2 innings pitched with a 0.9 whip. So the basic stats are looking good. The peripherals, not as much. His average exit velocity against and hard hit percentage are on the lower end relative. I mean, certainly compared to Ohtani. Barrel percentage is lower. K rate is lower. Fastball velocity is a little higher, or pretty comparable. Spin rate is good. Chase rate's good. So there's
I'm not
reason.
saying he's a bad player, but
No, yeah.
think about the leadership capability.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And there's a difference in
Kermit
leadership.
impressions ain't gonna do it.
Oh, but there was a Dallas Braden retweeted the most hilarious thing today. Michael K. So Dallas Braden does this thing where he'll tweet out a picture of his kicks of choice over kind of overlooking the stadium from the broadcast booth, and it'll just say view from the office. Michael K tweeted out a picture of him with his shoes and his socks, and it said view of the office or something like that. Dallas, I'm going to find the tweet because it's worth the price of admission. But he basically quote tweeted that, and then let's see. Cease and desist, and for Pete's sake, with a Garrett Cole voice, it's view from the office. So taking into consideration the Garrett Cole Kermit similarity and the fact that he said something along the lines of for Pete's sake when answering a question about spin rates when the sticky substance ban went into effect. It was just a whole mess of a situation, and Dallas Braden just destroyed him.
Yeah.
Just like, well, you know, and listen, I don't know Garrett Cole. I'm sure he's not a bad guy, but that bit is just too funny to not riff on constantly.
Oh, you bet.
I'm sure he's a nice guy, but either way, there's a certain back on this subject of this leadership vacuum, there's a certain difference in a guy who plays every day in Aaron Judge being your leader, being your face of the franchise, versus a guy like Cole who gets the ball every fifth day, right? He's gonna go out there and he's gonna compete and he's gonna be good, but he's only getting the ball once every fifth day, every third day maybe in the postseason. But he's getting the ball once a week, once every twice in 10 days, once in 5 days. He's not getting the ball every day. So there's a difference in that sort of like leadership kind of, and that's not saying that Cole is completely absent from the team when he's not pitching. It's just starting pitchers and pitchers in general, but starting pitchers have this weird thing. Some of them are just like, don't talk to me at all when I'm pitching. Like if I'm on the mound that day, don't talk to me. Like don't even come near me. Some pitchers are like that. And I don't know how Cole is. I don't watch the Yankees all that closely, but I'm sure Cole has a little bit of that in him. And so he's trying to stay in that zone the whole time. Whereas Judge, I'm sure Judge is, chopping it up with his teammates when they're in the dugout, when they're hitting. He's just chopping it up with the teammates, kind of telling the younger guys what he's seeing and trying to, be the face of that team, be the leader of that team. And not just because he's, 6'8" and massive, right?
Yeah.
So
certainly helps, though. Why do you think George Washington was so popular? Because that dude was taller than anybody else back then. My man was 6'4" when everybody else was 4'11". You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Nutrition back then, fantastic work. Fantastic work, America.
There are levels to this, folks. And then the last thing I wanted to hit on, really, I have a note on here on Alex Verdugo. He's just playing really well. I threw that in there just in case we had the ability to talk about it, the time to talk about it. But he's just playing really well, and the Sox are they just swept the Blue Jays. Actually, I don't know if they're playing a 4-game set.
Out of the AL East basement. Yeah,
they're not.
The Yankees, I think right now are the last.
The Yankees are in last place. Yeah, which is
Tampa Bay has just gotten to their first. They're the first team to 25 wins tonight.
We've gotten to the point where we're not really talking about the Rays, even though they're beating the brains out of everyone they're playing. I mean, the 2011 Pittsburgh Pirates came into town. Yeah, 2 out of 3 for the Rays, easy. Let's see. Yeah, so that was the bit. So that was the bit on the Yankees. We haven't even talked about the Rays. Sox are doing well. Verdugo's playing well. The last bit I wanted to touch on was a couple more injuries. I don't want to have to talk about injuries like this, but they just come up. And I think for a team that we highlighted at the beginning of the year as both all World Series picks, the Astros, both Jose Urquidy and Luis Garcia hitting the IL with shoulder inflammation for Urquidy and elbow discomfort the next day for Garcia. Neither one of those things sound particularly good. Shoulder inflammation has kept Raisel Iglesias of the Braves from pitching at all this year. He's just doing his rehab in AAA right now, but he hasn't been activated yet. So who knows how long that's going to take. And elbow discomfort is never a good sign, especially when you consider what elbow discomfort is a precursor to a lot of times. You don't want to wish that on anyone, but the signs are not good for those two. And I'm not saying the Astros are doomed without those two. Obviously, they have a great rotation without them, but they're just two pieces of a very deep rotation that need to be healthy if they're going to contend. I don't think McCullers has pitched at all this year. I don't know what his story is for his injury. Let me see what it is for McCullers.
I will have to say, while you're looking that up, J.P. Crawford, whether he did it on purpose, probably just did the most brilliant thing possible. Hard line drive, reaches up out of the air to grab it. He grabs it, but he seemingly drops it. Runners on first and second. They needed 2 more outs to get the inning. And they basically just tagged everybody out, and they just started walking off the field, and the umps are just like, we're in Oakland. What do you want? Let's just move on. Let's just move on. So it's JP's doing great at defensive shortstop. But all right, back to you.
Just the last thing on the Astros, McCullers is expected in June. He strained his elbow in spring training, or it has sidelined him since spring training. That was from a bullpen session on February 14th. So he hasn't pitched at all this year. Garcia and Urquidy both hitting the IL for the Astros. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world for them. I think it'll be fine. So the Astros put Garcia and Urquidy on the 15-day IL. We'll see how those things change over time, but a little bit of a concern for the Astros, who haven't really hit their stride yet. I mean, they swept the Braves in Atlanta. They're going to be fine. They're the Astros. They always just find a way somehow with some player out of nowhere, some guy they have in AAA or, what have you. They just know what they're doing. It's a well-run ball club. What are you going to do, truly? And those are kind of the big things that I had for this week. I had one last thing that we can end the show on, unless you have any final thoughts.
No, not particularly, other than the fact that the Astros right now are one place above the Mariners in the AL West, and that ain't good for them.
No.
So, and those two injuries to two pitchers probably aren't helping things much. So, as far as I'm concerned, Astros, keep doing what you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Not ideal for them. So, my final thought is at the top of the season, right before we kicked everything off, we had our show where we went through all of the predictions for awards and such. And I picked a certain pitcher for the New York Metropolitans to win the Cy Young Award. Now, it is May 3rd as we're recording this, as we're streaming this, right? May 3rd. It's not time to overreact yet. But Max Scherzer has been awful for the Mets. Absolutely terrible so far. Fastball velo's down. His FIP is north of 5.5, which is not a good sign for any pitcher, especially of his caliber. The baseball savant underlying metrics don't look great either. He's basically 50th percentile or lower in pretty much every category except for chase rate and expected batting average and whiff rate. So he's getting hit hard. He's not missing a lot of bats. He's not striking out a ton of guys. He's walking quite a few. So, and he had obviously had to miss time through the suspension with the foreign substance thing, which I don't think is a Max Scherzer thing. I think it was the umpire whose name I forget, but he's the only guy since Major League Baseball instituted the sticky substance ban that has thrown players out of games and then subsequently suspended them for having a foreign substance on their glove or on their person during an outing. So I don't think that's his fault. I think that's just the umpire being a little too like, hey, I want you to know what my name is. I want you to know who I am. But even that aside, Scherzer has not been good this year. Like he has really struggled out of the gate, and the underlying metrics don't look good. I would be moderately concerned if I was a Mets fan. I mean, it's May 3rd. The season is not over until October. It's a long season. It's a long way to go. But that does not look like a great pick for Cy Young right now.
So you're telling me that an older pitcher might have a steep decline after a heavy payout deal?
Yeah.
Is that what you're telling me?
That is what I'm telling you, Mr. Hyatt. That's what I'm telling you. Meet the Mets. No thanks. I don't want to meet the Mets. The Braves took 2 out of 3 from the Mets, which I enjoyed. Really should have been 3 out of 4, but they didn't play another game because of rain. But folks, that's our show. If Reese has no other final thoughts, that is our entire show. That is Gesundheit times 2.
Sorry, I don't have a mute button on mine. But,
You're good.
Those are my final thoughts. No, I'll bring the rating up for a beer here. I'll probably give it a 3.3. I think I just said a solid 3 before. You get used to it a little bit. It's almost like a sweet wheat ale almost.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't.
And of course, you see, I'm drinking it. Like, it's beer. I enjoy it. But is it one of my favorites? No. But yeah. I did want to give a little bit more credit on that one.
Yeah. And I mean, that said, I may have to bump mine as well. I think I'll go up to a 3. I don't think it's quite where I would want it to be. It's a bold attempt. I don't know how much the visual aspect of this plays into the taste part of it, because I know the whole, take one sense out and the others are heightened kind of philosophy, or not philosophy. It's actually scientifically proven. But you factor that into the equation. I don't know how much that plays. I'd be curious to do a blind taste test of these, but I think it's just the appearance and the presentation of it throws it off a little bit for me. So I'm going to go with 3, and even 3 out of 5.4 cookie dough flavored or cookie scented candles, I think was our rating system. 5.4 cookie flavored candles. Mine's at 3. Yours is up to 3.3. And with that, that's our show. That's Brews and Baseball, episode 12 of the podcast edition, folks. Thanks for joining us. Whether you joined us on the live stream, you checked us out on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, etc. We appreciate your support. We appreciate all of you very, very much. Whether you listen to this on Spotify the next morning, folks, you are the best. Brews and Baseball will be back next week. Reese will be in an undisclosed location, i.e. Florida.
I will be in Florida.
So I will be...
me, but I might pop in on the chat, maybe give a hot take every once in a while. I heard scratching on the walls, and I was like, is our special guest making another appearance? Yeah,
there she is, making another appearance.
I knew my hair wasn't terrible.
Yep,
she's back. This is her last appearance for a little bit, because she's gonna go to Utah. I'm going to Florida, so it's a little bit of sad time, but we're wrapping it up and things are okay.
We're wrapping it up. All is good in the world. Brews and Baseball is in the books, episode 12. We'll see you next week for episode 66 and an undisclosed whatever I'm going to do on Wednesday. I haven't decided yet. But folks, thanks for joining us. Reese, why don't you take us out?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, people of all identities, genders, across the world, the universe, in perpetuity, as we say in our collective home countries, and as we say on this show. We go!